Good afternoon and welcome to the episode of the Ad Rock Podcast. Well, you know what time it is. Time to get smarter. You know him, you love him. He is a holder of many titles, the favorite son of El Segundo and Cal State Northridge, and now the unofficial mayor of Mecklenburg County. My guy Tony Siracusa, also the managing editor of Last Word on College Football. All these things.
I got a new title this week. Wow. Wow. I'm not sure the county government or Mecklenburg County or the mayor of Charlotte is going to be thrilled with me usurping their authority, but if you deem it to be so, I'm ready to do it.
It has to be. Now, one of the things that kind of piqued my interest before we started was Jim Nagy, who
Mhm.
was the executive director of the Reese Senior Bowl, is now the general manager of the Oklahoma Sooners. What was
Mhm.
your first reaction when you saw this?
It's a good hire for Oklahoma. Nagy is very well versed in uh, what I would call talent acquisition, which let's face it, that's what college football is. That's what college sports is. When it comes to NIL, the collective, the revenue sharing, it really all boils down to talent acquisition. So, Nagy's role, as you said, it was the executive director. His job was to get players to go to the Senior Bowl. Now it sounds like, well, that's easy. Everybody wants to go to the Senior Bowl. Yes and no. Um, there used to be three bowls. There used to be the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, which was in Pasadena. That was from the NFL Players Association. There, that went away, I'm going to say 3 years ago, maybe, and kind of merged with the Senior Bowl. There's the East-West Shrine Game, which moves around. It was in Vegas a couple of years ago. I want to say it was in Texas this last year. Um, and then there's the Senior Bowl, which is in Mobile, Alabama every year. Senior Bowl is the oldest of them. It is the biggest name. It's the most recognized, but they all have kind of the same goal, and that is to get top line draft eligible college players, have them spend the week there working with NFL coaches, NFL, all the NFL scouts go like, I used to cover the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl in person. It was at the Rose Bowl. And the game itself was not even the point of the entire week. Nobody really cared by that point, other than the parents who were sitting in the bleachers and the fans who could buy tickets and watch some, and get some local ticket sales. For the players and the scouts, it was about the workouts and what they could see. While I was supposed to be sitting in the press box, I would often make my way into the seats and just kind of casually find my way into a huddled mass of scouts who were sitting there watching. And I would never introduce myself, never say a thing because they would shut up if they knew I was media. I would hide my credential inside my jacket and just sit there and listen and eavesdrop on their conversations, who looked good, who didn't. It's fun. The ones who were always the most forthcoming, strangely enough, were the scouts from the Canadian Football League. It would just openly talk about everything and everybody. Um, but these events have often been in competition with each other. You can't do the Shrine Game and do the Senior Bowl because the weeks overlap. The Shrine Bowl is, I think, on a Thursday night. The East West Shrine Game is on a Saturday. I'm sorry, the Senior Bowl is on a Saturday. And again, if you're taking into account what really matters is that week of workouts with the scouts, you can't do both. So Nagy's job was to make his the most high profile of all of them, get the best of the best. And it was funny when I would talk with the organizers of the Collegiate Bowl in Pasadena, you could tell that there was a theoretical pecking order because they would get upset if a player backed out of the Collegiate Bowl to go to the East-West Shrine Game. They would say, I get it if you're backing out because you got an invitation to the Senior Bowl. I get that. You back out because you got an invitation to the East West Shrine Game. you and your agent and everyone else, they're dead to us. You know, we don't want to deal with your people next year. So it's actually very competitive because the games are on TV. You want the best of the best. You want a good TV contract. And all of those things fell under Jim Nagy's role. So going to what he's going to do as a general manager for Oklahoma, it's kind of like what we've talked about with the jobs that have been opened up at Alabama and other major schools, um, where he's going to be managing what the team needs in terms of personnel, what's available in the portal, who can be had in the portal, how much of the revenue sharing money is going to come to the football program, how's it going to be. It's very much like an NFL general manager. And this is kind of the new trend in college football, hiring big people to do these jobs. Andrew Luck is doing it at Stanford. And I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Ron Rivera, the former NFL coach, got hired to do the same job at Cal. So Jim Nagy is a good hire. That having been said, and you knew there was another part of this, it was time for him to leave the Senior Bowl. He had become a person who the NFL teams did not like working with that much anymore. He was big into cutting off access to the players, a little overly protective. In other words, you're there to help the players get drafted or even improve their draft stock. And he would dictate how many scouts could be there from each team and even who they could be. And he cut off access to the local community, which, look, man, it's Alabama. It's a college football state. You get the local community supporting you, getting to watch some of the practices. Well, he took to closing all the practices. There used to be a couple of open ones where you could watch the players and the workouts. It's not like you're prepping for a real game and you have to worry about your schemes and your strategies. You're only allowed to do the very basic things, like you're not allowed to blitz and things like that. You just play straight up 11 on 11 football because it's an all-star game. You don't want anyone getting hurt. You're also not looking to get extravagant with the play calling. So there was no reason to have closed practices, but he did. He started becoming, I mean, one person told me today that he thought Nagy had become a control freak over all of it because it was so successful during his tenure that he became a little too big for the event. So we don't know yet who's going to replace him with the Senior Bowl, but I think it's a good move all around. Oklahoma gets a good, smart guy. Nagy gets to move on to something else, and the Senior Bowl needs a change of leadership.
Agreed. I talked to a couple of our brethren in the media, those who have some of them who have even attended the Senior Bowl, and the couple of thoughts I got was if you didn't work for a major outlet, be it ESPN or something like that,
Yeah,
that somehow there was not enough room for you there now. And it was a whole lot of back and forth there, and Nagy rubbed people the wrong way. Like his
yeah.
attitude, and then when he would insult other bowl games, like he
Hmm.
insulted the East-West Shrine Bowl. I'm
Hmm.
like, what are you doing? And
Right.
it is the hope that the Senior Bowl can get back to what it should be about, which is getting these players drafted.
Yeah, we had a
Not,
tough time getting our credentials a couple of years ago. And I'm like, you know what? The NFLPA credentialed me for its bowl game. You'll be fine, you know. But we had a very tough time getting credentialed the first time. And so and but again, if you're ESPN and I think the NFL network shows the game if you're the NFL network, all good. Everybody else, whatever. So and again, he had become challenged. By the time these players understand that by the time these players get to these bowl games, these all-star games, they have agents for the NFL. By NCAA rules, for whatever those are worth, your NIL agent is not allowed to be your NFL agent, your agent to represent you in your NFL negotiations. Um, most NIL agents are not certified by the NFL to be NFL agents anyway. Most of them are local attorneys, and that's pretty much that. Um, so most of these kids have agents by that point, and the agents are there with them, and the agents are talking to the scouts. That's part of the gig. That's part of what happens. You're having these very preliminary conversations. There are some guys who actually leave town before the actual game. They get to the workouts, they get through the workouts, the game being whatever it is. There will be some players who will leave and go start their workouts with their trainers. There are a couple of high-end places in Florida that do training for these players and get them ready specifically for the NFL Combine, get them ready for the specific drills that get done for their positions at the NFL Combine, which of course is this week. It's Thursday through Sunday of this week. And So that's how intense it is. And for Nagy to be an obstacle for any of them, a little too ego driven, I think.
It was just completely just ego driven where you're stunned at it and you're just
Hmm.
the level. Just a small example, there was a player who was a FCS defensive end, won a bunch of awards. One of my first interviews as a reporter, like almost a decade, actually a little over a decade ago, and
Hmm.
said how he made a choice of going to the East West Shrine Bowl because of how he was treated by
Hmm.
some of those Senior Bowl representatives. And
Hmm.
it was just like it's stunning. It's stunning to me the level of people who put on these events who make the events about them and not about the actual players.
Right, exactly. Because you're not there without the players. You're not doing this job without the players.
Exactly. Now, this story is a different one. It's
Hmm.
Greg Brooks, his family was on Good Morning America, and they accused Brian Kelly of just using their son's memory to make himself look better in public by because Kelly said that he was at their son's side when he was passing away, and yet
Right.
thought word came out that he hadn't talked to Greg or his family in about 16 months.
Hmm.
When you see such positive strides that Kelly has tried to make at LSU, having Heisman Trophy winners, having first round draft picks at wide receiver, he does this. Why is he this?
Yeah, that's boy, it's a pretty loaded question. I think that there's a lot of issues with this story. First of all, I mean, let's go through Greg Brooks for a minute in case people have forgotten that his family is suing LSU and they're suing the football team doctors. I think Kelly is named in it, but is not a primary defendant of the lawsuit. And it alleges that the LSU coaching staff forced Greg Brooks to continue to practice, threatening his starting position, even though he was telling people he doesn't feel well. He's got these headaches. He's got a lack of stamina, that they continued to push him for weeks, and that ran no neurological tests when he talked about his ongoing headaches. It turned out that Brooks has a rare form of brain cancer, um, and it advanced during that time when it went unmonitored. Um, and he's got permanent, you know, he's got permanent neurological damage. He'll never walk again. Um, and the family came out, like you said, on Good Morning America, and said that, um, said that the coaching staff and the coach Kelly, Brian Kelly, was never around during the rehab after the surgery, never checked in on Brooks. And I get it. I don't know if Kelly did or didn't. I don't know. But I get that the family is grieving over what happened. They're worried about their son. The football is gone. There is, there's it's very complex medically. And they're suing the university. And I get it. And they're upset that Kelly was never around offering support. Um, and I get that. And they should have, I don't blame them for venting. Parents who are that upset over the well-being of their child tend to vent. The mistake was Kelly responding. I don't know what in God's name he was thinking, because he did a press conference where he went back and said, I did go visit him and we talked about this and I was around for that. And he wouldn't go into details because of the lawsuit. The school attorneys clearly advised him just keep it very vague. Um, but he said he visited multiple times, and he said that he felt the need to correct their factually incorrect statements. Man, don't do that. Just don't. Let the family say what they're going to say publicly. All right. Because there is no way for you as the football coach to win this fight, this PR fight with the family. No matter what you say, you look like an ass. No matter what you do, no matter how you reply to their allegations, you'll look like an ass, because the family has got all of this sitting on their shoulders, with what turned out to be brain cancer. Don't. Just leave it alone. Just, you know what? I understand the family's position. I really don't have any comment. Our legal team has advised me not to have any comment because of the ongoing litigation. So I wish the family well. I wish Greg Brooks well, and leave it at that. Kelly spends too much time trying to do damage control, rehab his image. Most of it has been minor stuff. I mean, he looked like an idiot in his first press conference after he left Notre Dame to go to LSU and he was speaking in some fake Southern, accent. Uh, he would said that's just the way he talks, and it's not. He did ridiculous, dance videos, and he looks foolish. Um, don't just coach foot. Yeah, look, man, you're not Lane Kiffin. You're not going to be a social media savant. All right. Just stop. Just be LSU's football coach. Does this kind of stuff damage your recruiting? Of course it does. But guess what? It damages your recruiting whether you reply to the parents or not. It probably damages it even more when you do reply, because if you're the parent of a football coach, or of a football player rather, and you think about LSU and you're like, oh my God, did you see what Brian Kelly said about the parents and all of this? I don't want my kid going through that. So just when when things are bad enough, don't make them worse. Put the shovel down and stop digging the trench even deeper.
All he had to say was exactly what you had said, and it just for me, it's the amount of unforced errors through Kelly's coaching career goes back to just hearing anecdotes about how he had two of his assistants come over when he was at Central Michigan, and they thought that they were coming over for a party, like, and he had them park cars.
Right.
Those
Yeah, I had forgotten about that, but you're right. Yeah.
those two assistants were Robert Saleh, former coach of the Jets, and
Yep.
Matt LaFleur, current coach of the Green Bay Packers.
Yep. Well, I had forgotten about that. You're right.
When he was at the University of Cincinnati, and he had accepted the job at Notre Dame. At the end of each year, as I guess as the customer of school, he would have each class, he would talk in front of each class. He would talk in front of the seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. He didn't tell them at all. Not even a freshman. He didn't tell the freshmen at all. And the
Right.
f- and the freshmen are thinking, okay, this guy's going to be here and be our coach. They had to find out from TV.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he had just signed them. They've been on his team for a season, and all of a sudden he's leaving. And you and I get it. That's part of the college sports world. Coaches come and go. When our daughter was being recruited by a handful of colleges, and I let her handle things on her own until she came to me and asked for help or advice. I always told her, you do not go to a school. You don't choose a school because of the coach. I know that sounds naive, but coaches come and go. You choose it for all the other reasons. You can choose not to go to a school because of the coach. You don't like the coach, and that's a good enough reason to not go there, but you don't choose to go because of a coach. But you and I know the realities of in something like college football, college basketball, the bigger sports, the recruiting process is a year and a half, 2 years, 2.5 years. And you get to know these coaches and their families and their wives and everything else. And it becomes this deeper level of personal relationship. And so then when he blows out the door without even telling you, man, that stings.
In our business, we definitely have to deal with personalities of all shape, form, and fashion. We get that. But in this, just going from the game on just a human level, this is just thoroughly unlikable.
Right. Right. And I don't know, Brian. I've been on Zoom calls, Zoom press conferences with him. I've never met him in person. Um, but he really needs to stop trying to be something and someone he's not. Again, I don't know if he visited the kid. A lot. It's a he said, she said. So you're not going to win that.
Oh,
Not against grieving parents. So just stop. Just quit trying to prove yourself where it's not going to do you any good. And the failure to do it correctly is going to be really damaging.
but all this does now is turn up the heat that was already on LSU
Hmm.
to succeed because 4, 5 loss seasons are not going to get it done. But they're stuck with him because of a super
Well,
contract.
yeah, well, and if you're LSU, you need the narrative to change because right now the focus isn't on your football team. Spring camp starts in 2 weeks in most places. But the focus isn't on your football team. The focus is on your coach and these other stories.
I mean, it's just he chooses to be something and someone, like you said, that is not him. Just be who you are. Like
Right.
some people will like it, some people won't. Like I will give Dabo Swinney this. Dabo is as prickly as you will find a person at times,
Mhm.
but he's unapologetically that.
Oh, this is who he is. It's look, I don't agree with him on the portal and NIL and all of these other things, especially, not while he's making 9 million a year. I don't agree with him on all those things, but he believes it. This is and he will sit down and have the conversation with you about it. Um, Again, I don't agree, but he's authentic. I guess that's what I would say. It's who he is. I don't agree with a lot of it, but he is authentic. Kelly is trying to move the needle on who and what he is from one month to the next, 1 year to the next, and it doesn't really work well. And if you're LSU, like you said, there's more pressure to win in order to take the storyline off your coach.
He's trying to be the cool uncle, like you mentioned Lane Kiffin, where Kelly's like, all right, like, dude, your knees and your back hurt just like ours do. Don't you? This
Right.
is this don't be something you're not. At least with Lane, to Lane's credit, Lane knows when to open his mouth and when not to at times. Yes, at times he will tend to walk that line, but he doesn't do this.
And he's always, and this has been Lane since he was an assistant coach at USC back under Pete Carroll. He's always been brash. Um, but like you said, he generally knows where the line is also.
What did you think of the conference commissioners who they didn't really make seating changes at the last meeting? Do you think this will be on the table, or are they going to wait for expansion?
No, I think they're going to change. I do think they're going to change the seeding before this season starts, and we're talking about the college football playoffs. Excuse me. They would do just straight seeding. So in other words, would get rid of the first round buys that the top four teams had. They would just do the seedings based off their last polling before the playoffs start and the postseason starts. The first round buys that went to the four highest ranked conference champions didn't really work well. All of those teams got beat early. So and it's ironic because you would see, if you remember the SEC championship game, with Kirby Smart complaining that his team needed a rest instead of playing in a conference championship game. And Greg Sankey was in the camera shot, and you could kind of see the snarl on Sankey because those conference championship games are worth a boatload of money. But then you had teams who were getting that first round bye for the playoffs complaining that they had too much time off because they essentially had 3 to 4 weeks off from the last time they played. So, I have no idea where that line is between too much time and too little time. So we're just going to erase the time and not do the first round buys. I think it will. There's another meeting in May in Dallas with the conference commissioners and the athletic directors of the school. Now let's also be clear that these meetings are primarily being run by the Big Ten and the SEC. We got 2 points to bring out. If they make a change before the 2025 playoffs, it requires a unanimous vote of all four power conferences and the schools within those power four conferences. What will basically happen is the conference commissioner for the Big 12, Brett Yormark, will take the poll of his schools. Jim Phillips will take the poll of his schools, and you'll get the votes that way. Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti as well, and you'll get the votes that way. After 2025, it doesn't require the unanimous vote anymore because the charter changes starting in 2026. And essentially, the Big Ten and the SEC run the playoffs at that point, at least in terms of the formatting and the structure. And so, if you want a say in it, if you're Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, you want a say in it, this is your last shot to have that. Because the contract ends at the end of the 2025 season. So when the championship game is over in January 2026. And then it goes on to the new contract, which gives primary authority to the Big Ten and the SEC. And that's why, we're going to see expansion is going to rely upon them and what they want. The most likely right now is an expansion to 14 teams. The question at stake is the automatic qualifiers. The two conferences, the two bigger conferences, want a guarantee of how many teams they will get in. The format would be for the automatic qualifiers, what they call 4-4-2-2-1-1. There would be 4 bids each for the Big Ten and the SEC. There would be 2 for the ACC and the Big 12. There would be 1 group of 5, and there'd be another at large. which could conceivably be assigned to the Pac-12 if it does get itself back to full conference status. So what you're looking at is doesn't matter if you got four teams in the SEC that are among the elite 8 or 10 in the country, they're getting four teams in, period. Even if the ACC has three teams that are better than the fourth team in the SEC, doesn't matter. We're now moving towards we are going to have a guaranteed amount of qualifiers per conference, as determined really mostly by the Big Ten and the SEC. So they didn't come up with any firm decisions in their meetings last week in Dallas, or this week actually in Dallas, sorry. They met on Monday and Tuesday, and then they adjourned on Wednesday. But but they made some progress in the discussions about, the new 2026 and the new 6-year contract and what can change before then, things like that. So there is another meeting. Like I said, I believe it's first week of May, maybe second week of May. And I would think we'll have some firm changes then. But I think the first thing that they will look at is getting rid of the teams getting buys in the first round of the playoffs. And they'll do that in time for this year.
It sounds like the more logical plan when you look at just the level of, it's not so much a power grab because you have the Big Ten, you have the SEC, who, like you said, at the end of this year will be, firmly in charge of everything. And to see how that
Mhm.
will change the football landscape kind of made me think of, I caught something the other day and I want to run it by you. There was Mike Krzyzewski was on a podcast and he was trying to push the notion of an Big East ACC merger.
Right.
And one writer from Last Word who writes, I think, writes for basketball, named Nathaniel Knopf's, February 24th, he lays out the case perfectly. Folks, if you don't read Last Word on Sports, especially the football section, do yourself a favor, go read it. It is well written, but this is basketball. And Nathaniel lays
Mhm.
out the case of just this super merger. Now, we
Mhm.
had spoken before in the past about if the ACC and Big 12 would combine, which is unlikely. Could you see something where instead of combining, you see the ACC maybe starting to dip into other conferences to kind of just pick off teams?
Yeah, you could. Let's be realistic about what this would mean. One, the ACC obviously would have to go into salvation mode if a couple of schools leave. Um, Look, if and I think we talked about this last time, if Florida State and Clemson get the legal permission to leave, other schools are going to also. That then does the opposite. It puts the ACC schools up for grabs, the schools that are left, um, with a different priority assessment for each of them. I mean, there's going to be more demand to get Miami to join your conference than there is Wake Forest. That's, just the sports reality of it. Um, a Big East, and the reason it was covered by the basketball department was because the Big East isn't a football conference anymore. It's got Creighton and DePaul and Providence and Seton Hall. It's a basketball conference. Ironically, when you look at it, the ACC exists as is because it raided the old Big East, right? You and I grew up, we remember the original Big East, right? St. John's and Georgetown and Villanova, Syracuse. And it was, man, it was basketball, but it was the best basketball. That was fun. And you had the great coaches, John Thompson and Louis Carnesecca and Raleigh Massimino and guys like that. Um, and then the ACC needing to expand years ago in order to keep up with everybody else. went and raided the Big East of the schools that played football that also were good at basketball and good at other sports, but played football. So they went and got Syracuse, Miami, Boston College, so on and so forth, Georgia Tech. They went and got all these schools that were in the Big East and folded them into the ACC. So you can see where I find the irony that Jim Phillips is concerned about conference realignment when the ACC wouldn't even exist right now without the schools that it pillaged from the Big East. Could there be a merger? Sure, there could be. Would it save the ACC? No, it wouldn't, because football is driving the bus, and these aren't football schools. So could there be a merger where, you're competing in basketball? You look at those schools, again, that are in there, and sure, they're basketball schools and maybe they play some other sports. I don't know. UConn is in the conference, but UConn's actually an independent for football. I have no idea if Butler plays baseball or I've got no idea. So I don't know how viable it is for other sports. It would primarily be for basketball, but it doesn't save the ACC because it doesn't move the marker for football at all. It would the Big East or the Big ACC or ACC East or East ACC or whatever they want to call it would be a basketball conference, and the other schools would, the football programs from those schools would have to go somewhere else. Now, that creates a different problem. If you are, I don't know, we'll pick one. If you're Miami, um, the SEC wants you they want you for your football first and foremost, but they expect to get your athletic department in its entirety. They expect your basketball program to come and your whatever other sports you excel at, your baseball program. They expect all of it. So it could happen, but doing that could then impinge upon some of the schools being able to move on to another conference should the ACC dissolve. What I think winds up happening, if there is any sort of merger, is that it's only a handful of ACC schools while the others go find new homes. It's Wake Forest and it's Virginia Tech. You know, it's a handful of the smaller schools that really don't have an obvious home somewhere else. And it's for basketball and whatever else is there. And they wind up playing football as independents like UConn does.
And it'll be interesting. Like I said, we still in the money era and the conference realignment
Mhm.
era. And it's funny,
Mhm.
as I always prepare my show, I kind of go through notes and kind of go through emails. And living in Wisconsin, one of the things that, when you have listeners, and I was remiss in asking you your thoughts about Wake Forest signing Gabe Kershke, the transfer from Colorado State, who played at Wisconsin, not from Wisconsin, he played Wisconsin, and he gets to play for a Wisconsin guy at Wake. Now,
Right.
I watched him at Colorado State. He very good motor, but it was it, this is a kid who turned down Ole Miss.
Right.
What are your thoughts about his role in being able to fit within what Jake Dickert wants to bring to the table?
I think there's a lot of potential there. Because obviously he's got good size. I mean, the kid is like 6'5". He's 245 though. He needs to put on some weight. And that is what Wake Forest has him listed as at 245. So for a defensive lineman in the ACC, he's going to need to put on another 10, 15 pounds. Now, I will say that depth at defensive line is a concern for Dickert. We talked to him a week ago. Only seems like it was 4 or 5 weeks ago. Time moves fast around here. And he said that, when I asked him about how much he got in the portal because he got 21 players through the portal. Um, and I asked him if there was any concerns of holes that he didn't fill. It's going to have to look at in the spring window. And specifically, he said defensive line and the defensive secondary. So there is the potential for some playing time. He's going to be important when it comes to the depth on the roster, but I mean, there's potential there because Wake Forest lost several key players to graduation slash eligibility expiring off the defensive line. He's got a shot to get some snaps. Does he have a shot to start? Gonna have to have of a spring. He really is. I think right now, as Wake Forest starts spring camp on so look at my calendar, the 18th of March. He's going to get a lot of work. He's going to get a lot of snaps, but he's got to put on some weight and some strength to really have a shot at getting a lot of work early on.
Last, I want to discuss flopping penalties. Like, I guess my thing is, what took so long? And I just don't remember playing or watching and just people just flopping like fish on the field. Like, this is real, like, NBA-ish stuff.
Vlade Divac. Remember Vlade?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Vlade Divac playing college football. Look, there are there's a lot of disgruntlement about players faking injuries in order to slow down the other team, stop the clock, slow down momentum. An offense is driving down the field. Everything is quick, quick, quick. And you'll see a player take a dive. And some of it's really obvious. I will tell you that if Lane Kiffin is going to continue to tell his players to do this, he needs to send them to acting classes because they're really not good at hiding that it's fake. They look like, Premier League soccer players who, someone steps on their ankle and they go down like they've been shot. It's because it's so easy to see. Now, having said that, I've heard from coaches and administrators who have suggested the rule should be that if you are injured, if you go down with an injury, you have to come out for the rest of that series. Series could be another 3 plays, it could be 13 plays. And a coach would have to use a timeout in order to get you back in. There are a couple of concerns that get expressed, and it has to do with injuries, like legitimate injuries, that players who are legitimately injured won't want to come out because they don't want to sit out the rest of the series. So they will have a significant injury, but they will get up, rub some dirt on it, and continue to play through when they shouldn't. Because the line, you can't have a line that says, well, if you're faking an injury, you have to come out. Well, because who says you're faking it? We can tell that they're faking it, but we're not medical doctors. We're not trainers. And a trainer can say, no, really, his ankle has got this problem, his knee, whatever. He truly is injured, whether they're, or even just as much, he's dehydrated and cramping up, whatever. There is no ability to draw a line on the field of play during a game with the officials between a fake injury and someone who really is hurt. So the injured players are going to find a way to stay in. And I think that's possible. And I think coaches will rely on that as a way to not approve of changing these rules into that type of rule. But here's the reality of it. When we were at the American Football Coaches Association conference in Charlotte at the end of January, and there was a coaches vote on the transfer portal windows and kind of revamping the college calendar. And you and I had talked about that as Last Word was there to cover it. In that meeting, though, which lasted 4 hours with the coaches, they were also supposed to be talking about a change in the rules for this specific to cover this specific topic. And it never got brought up because the entire 4 hours was spent debating the December college football calendar. Um, and so it never came up for a vote or anything else, but we talked to some coaches off the record. So I can tell you what they said, but I can't tell you who said it, who talked to us about why it didn't come up for a vote. And really generically, what they were telling us was it wouldn't have mattered if it did. It wouldn't have mattered if most of us voted to change that rule because Greg Sankey doesn't want it. And so his coaches in his conference will never vote to approve it. Therefore, it doesn't have enough votes to change. We can't change the rule with the entire SEC voting against the change. It won't work. And those schools will kind of lobby some of the other schools, maybe in the Big Ten, to vote no. So basically, Sankey doesn't want the rule, doesn't like the rule. And he'll claim it's for because of player safety and real injuries, and he'll say whatever it is he's going to say. What difference does it make? If Greg Sankey doesn't want it, it's not going to happen. So that's the reality of where it is. Could they come up with something? Maybe. Is it going to be a priority or high on their list? Nope. Not unless Greg Sankey puts it at the top of the list, and he doesn't have it there right now. So we talked to 5 coaches off the record after that meeting. Talked to them on the record for some other stuff, but with regards to that specific rule, we promised them we wouldn't use their name. And they were like, yeah, that's not the SEC would kill it no matter how we voted. So there you have it. Not likely to change. We're likely to just see more players, practice their soccer dives.
How can people interact with you on social media and what's coming up on Last Word?
You can go to lastwordonsports.com and click on the college football link. And there we are. We've got some great coverage of the upcoming spring camps. Like I said, for some schools, we're only a week or two away. I think the earliest one we have starts March 8th. So essentially a week and a half away. And then others start later on in March. We also have a lot of coverage of the NFL draft combine. How are the Michigan players looking? Who's there from Notre Dame? Where do these guys fit into NFL rosters? Excuse me. And so we've got a lot of coverage, even though we are the college football people. We follow them until they are in an NFL uniform. We keep following these guys. So with the combine being Thursday through Sunday of this week, we've got a lot of coverage of that as well. We've got an Instagram page. We've got a Facebook page. We've got Twitter at Last Word on CFB. We've got Blue Sky with the same thing. And you can find me at Tony Bruin on both of those apps. And apparently I will start getting my campaign going on social media for mayor of Charlotte.
Yes, the whole county, like all of Charlotte,
I'm going to
West
get the
Charlotte,
whole county. Okay.
whole
I will be
county.
running the whole county. All right. Well, good to know. There's a lot that needs fixing.
One of my favorite things is when I pull up Last Word is when I read different types of articles and the headline. Two caught my eye. One made me feel very old, and one made me feel very young. The very old was Return of the Mac at Pennsylvania. The reference was the greatest thing there where I clapped. I really clapped at that one. It's Nick Crom, I think, wrote that one
Yep.
about Safety King Mac who is returning, and it just the ability to connect with any reader, just even somebody in the business is a weird thing. Then the next one was Super Saiyan in Ohio. That is a Dragon Ball
Yeah.
reference. I know this because my son,
Uh-huh.
and it is such good work, and it is worth your read. Just something new every day,
Yeah.
refresh it. It
Yeah,
is.
we're gonna be having fun with Mr. Saiyan and his name all season long because as the article says, hey, we're just saying,
It
you
was
know.
great. It was perfect. It is a
Yeah, Drew
combination
Drew
of
Drew Crabtree covers Ohio State for us, and he's there on the inside. He's fully credentialed and embedded with the program, and And he had a fun time with that one. And I guarantee you, we're gonna be having some fun with that name quite a bit in the upcoming season. So Drew does a great job covering Ohio State.
As always, Tony, thank you so much for joining me in this episode of the Ad Route Podcast.
All right, man, be well.